Okay, thank you for all of your patience. We're getting set up. Dr. Judy was supposed to do this live, and she was actually here like 5 minutes ago, and none of her technology was working. So I jumped in to do the live with Billy, so that way we could get this sort of on time. And Judy's going to go pick up my kid. So we just swapped roles for right this second. But for those of you that don't know him, Billy is the VP of Nutrition and Communication at Green Juju. We have quite a few of the Green Juju products. They have treats and toppers. They also have awesome bone broths and different veggie blends that you can get at your local pet store. So Billy is super nerdy when it comes to nutrition for our pets. And he literally texted us over the weekend and was like, I have this really cool thing I want to share about fermented fruit that you can do at home. And I want to share all the benefits with your community. So here we are. For those of you that don't know Billy, sit back and relax and take a little tour on fermenting fruit with Billy.
Yeah, and I was extremely awkward in leaving the message, which is my MO, is being completely awkward. So very happy to oblige in that way as well. So no, I just really like you guys as people, but I also think our missions align, very well. And so it's nice to be able to come on it and talk about this. I really, one of the things that brings me a lot of joy in this industry is to kind of think of new things and new solutions and be on the forefront of how to do things differently. If you've ever been to my Instagram and seen just sort of how I feed my dog, I think it's slightly different than most, even people in the industry. And so I'm always trying to push that envelope. And so sometimes I stumble upon some easy things for people to do. And easy, I think, is the key word for this particular one. But also I think that's really the name of the game, because most people want to do things that's really healthy for their dogs and cats, but they don't want to spend all day doing it. They don't want to, like, for instance, like when I feed my dog Huckleberry, I don't want to do a huge prep day. Some people love doing prep days and all that kind of stuff. But it's just not my bag. So I like to just have a lot of things on hand that essentially I can kind of mix and match it and do whatever I want in that. And so obviously,
like a few gallons of colostrum here and there.
four perhaps. That is hilarious. Yes. It pays to live in Pennsylvania, and we at Green Juju work with some very, very wonderful goat milk farmers, and so having access to that colostrum was pretty amazing. But
I'm super jealous.
So I lost my train of thought now thinking about colostrum. Oh yeah. So fermentation. So, a good lead into this product would be, this is a great pairing with, Green Juju has some amazing fermented products. So be it Lewis Fermented Golden Paste or Bam's Beets or even Bailey's Blend, one of our frozen blends that you can use to ferment itself. I think this is a great pairing with that. Because if you can get a few different ferments into, your dog's diet on a daily basis, I think that's really advantageous. And also, this is going to be a different kind of ferment. This is going to be a ferment using kombucha. And kombucha is actually not an AAFCO-approved ingredient, so you won't find it in any foods. And so, which is, a bummer because it's such a cool ingredient, but yeah, I don't think they understand really even. In fact, I was at a regulatory meeting a long time ago and someone called it kombucha. So I don't know if they know exactly what it is or,
oh man,
anything like that. And so this is going to be more.
Kombucha needs an advocate at these meetings, Billy. Come on, you need a t-shirt or something.
So, this is more of a DIY one, but I'm a huge advocate of DIY in terms of, feeding things you feed yourself. And kombucha is really cool because the first thing about kombucha that's sort of advantageous before I get into the process, and I do have props, which, is very exciting. Normally I don't. And I even have an empty bottle of kombucha, so also very exciting.
Awesome.
I put a lot of money into this presentation. So So kombucha is a really cool ferment because you're fermenting tea, and most kombuchas, including the commercial one I'm going to plug here that I think people can use in this process, is black and green tea. Now, the first thing people think is like, I don't want to feed my dog caffeine, but there's a really interesting thing that happens when you take tea, black and green tea, and then you ferment it through this process, and out the other side comes kombucha. You're actually reducing the caffeine content to negligible amounts. And the other thing that's really cool about that is nobody knows why. They just know that the bacteria they were using to ferment it somehow process it in that case. But we don't know exactly why. It's one of those really neat things in nutrition that people go through and they go like, oh, here's the end result. We don't know how we got there, but the end result's really healthy. And so number one, you don't have to worry about the caffeine aspect of it. But you do get all of those wonderful polyphenols, all of those really great antioxidants, and the antioxidants in even the kombucha that I'm going to recommend specifically for this. And then obviously through that kombucha as well, you're getting all of those wonderful beneficial bacteria. And I think even more important in this case, you're getting beneficial yeasts. So kombucha is high in both probiotics and beneficial yeast. And I think this is a great way to get basically different species in. So like if I'm feeding my own dog, I'm going to be using currently, I guess I don't need to give an example. I can just tell you exactly what I'm doing currently. I'm using a yeast probiotic, and I'm also using BAM's beets as a probiotic. I'm also feeding, green juju goat milk as a probiotic. And then this fermented fruit or berries, more specifically in this case, would be another different species of those good probiotics and yeast. So I'm a huge advocate I've said advocate like 48 times in this. I don't know why. I don't usually say the word advocate, but so I'm going to not say it again. So,
well, before you go down your really nerdy wormhole, which I will thoroughly appreciate, could you just back up, because you very quickly said the term beneficial yeast. And I know that there are going to be new people to this that are going to immediately say yeast, like, don't we want to avoid that? So can you just quickly talk about when you're saying these things like probiotic, beneficial yeast, bacteria, how that's different from, I guess, like the negative connotation of a yeast overgrowth or a bacterial infection?
Yeah. So the easiest way to explain that is just, we've all heard of, bad bacteria. So we've all heard of, E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria. We've all also heard of probiotics, and all those probiotics are beneficial strains of bacteria in the gut. And there's been more that have come out, sort of on beneficial yeast, especially in the dog and cat community. But there are good strands of yeast and there are bad strands of yeast. Saccharomyces boulardii would be one that, people reference a lot and does major work. And those beneficial yeast actually support a better microbial environment for even the probiotics that your dog or cat ingests. And so the very simple way to say that is there's good yeast and there's bad yeast, just like that. In fact, I'm dealing with a yeasty dog myself. I seem to have gotten over the hump through some great inoculation therapy, I'll call it, but with good yeast. And a good yeast is really great at crowding out bad yeast as well. That's kind of, where we go from there. So that's kind of the explainer on that one. And kombucha, like I said, is a great way to do this. So another thing that this combines is, especially if you've been seeing, any of the information coming out from the Forever Dog book and things like that, berries are kind of a big topic of conversation here because they're a great source of dietary fiber. They're a really, really good source of antioxidants. And so we all know that adding, raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, all these things are beneficial in the diet. So how do we make them more beneficial? Well, let me tell you first how I thought of doing this. So the
inner workings of Billy on a casual Sunday. Okay.
So You don't, keep in mind when I tell you this, you don't have to brew kombucha in order to do this. But my journey started because I brew kombucha. I brew about 1.5 gallons a week. For those who are thinking about doing it, it only takes me 30 minutes roughly to do this per week. Once you get into kind of the rhythm of it, I know that I did do a phone call a long time ago with Hugh. I don't think he started doing it, but we did have a phone call about him.
You did make an impact on his life, though. He started drinking kombucha.
Okay.
I don't think it ever got brewed at the homestead, but he was drinking it.
Well, the next time I'm there, maybe I can show him, because it's much easier to show someone how to do it. But so I was brewing kombucha, and what happens is you do the first ferment for 7 days, and that's your plain kombucha. But I specifically brew whatever flavor Emily wants on most occasions, my wife. You know her, but maybe some people don't watching. And for flavoring, you do a second ferment, which means you add fruit or juice or whatever you want for 3 days, and you leave that out on the counter, and you flavor the kombucha with that. And so at the time, we were doing one that was raspberry, ginger, and lemon. So I was putting raspberries in these 16-ounce bottles, and then I was doing the second ferment. And when I took it out to drink it, I would be like, oh, it immediately occurred to me, this is with Lua at the time when she was alive. I was like, oh, this would be a really great thing. This is fermented fruit. I should save this all for Lua, because we're going to get the health benefit of all of the raspberry content and also everything I mentioned with kombucha. So that's kind of where this came from. This will be a slightly different, basically what you keep it in will be slightly different, because we're not looking to carbonate it, which in kombucha brewing with the second ferment, you'd get carbonation there. So let me just run through really quick. The funny thing is the shortest part of this video will actually be how to do it, because it's that easy to do. So I brought my prop here. This is a 16-ounce jar of fermented raspberries and blueberries. Now it's hard to see it because, number one, you'll notice there's a green tint there, and that has to do with this kombucha that I specifically use, which we'll talk about in a second. But for those of you at home, it's the easiest process in the world. All you do is take whatever berry you want. So, as I mentioned, I guess the big three would be blackberries, raspberries, and blueberries. So blueberries are a really popular one right now. So with blackberries and raspberries, you can just throw them in there. With blueberries, I would cut them in half, so it kind of is able to get in there a little bit more. I've noticed it doesn't as well with the skin with blueberries. So all you do is cut your blueberries in half, fill this jar up with blueberries, and then fill the rest of it with kombucha, so they're submerged. And then you're just going to take a paper towel, put it on top of this, and then put a rubber band around the top and leave it on your counter for 3 days. And that is literally the whole process. So if you were doing raspberries, blackberries, again, put them in, I should say, fill the jar with the berries, then pour kombucha around it, and then put a paper towel on top, and then rubber band around that to keep it on. Now, the reason you're doing the paper towel instead of the lid, I brought this lid because I'm at a co-working space, but the reason why you're doing the paper towel is you're not looking to maintain the carbonation for your dog, obviously. So that will allow this to ferment, and the gas, essentially the CO2, will be allowed to escape as well, because you're obviously not looking for it to be carbonated when you do it. Then once you leave it on your counter for 3 days, all you have to do then is you can put your lid on and store this in your fridge for 30 days. And then when you're feeding your dog, all you need to do is take whatever you want out of it and feed your dog. And again, this will be a great source of beneficial yeast and bacteria. Now the brand I would recommend here that's widely available is called GT's. So this is one of them. This is actually specifically the one I would recommend because you get another cool nutritional effect as well, which is this one's called multigreen, and it has blue-green algae in it. So it has 2 different kinds of blue-green algae and spirulina. I make the differentiation there because spirulina is actually not blue-green algae. It's actually bacteria that photosynthesize photosynthesize like plants, which can get really interesting because it's really one of the only plant species with vitamin K2, but that's kind of a whole wormhole you can go down on the other side of things. But so the cool thing is this is specifically an example of that, of this brand of kombucha. So now I have the kombucha, I have the berries, all those wonderful health benefits we talked about, but also this kombucha already has blue-green algae in it. So now we have the health benefits of the blue-green algae in combination with this as well. So you get another shot of antioxidants and B vitamins and all sorts of good things. But you can use any flavor kombucha you want. So you could use their plain variety. You could use, the ginger one. You could use, especially maybe the ginger one if you have an animal that's dealing with stomach issues. You could use my favorite one, which is called lemon berry. All of them are going to have different health benefits.
So for this, you would recommend feeding the liquid and the plant material of the finished product?
So what I would do is I would first feed just the berries themselves. So the way that I feed it is I would just take a fork and take some out and put it in there because you want to keep them submerged in here while you store them. And then at the end, you could either feed it to your animal, and for the liquid part of it, the dosage I usually go by is 1 teaspoon per 20 pounds per meal. Or you could just drink it yourself. You could drink the liquid after it's done or whatever you want to do in regard to that. So, but I would scoop it out first because it's sort of like any other ferment. You want to keep it submerged in this liquid while it's in the fridge because that's what keeps it good as a food safety method.
And another question that popped up is, does it matter if you use like organic versus not organic fermentation wise? For
the berries?
I guess either.
Yeah, usually kombucha is just organic by nature of the companies doing it. Like this you can find anywhere, and this is a really great brand in terms of that. It's organic. If you're using non-organic berries, you'd want to wash them pretty well. But I would tell you to, I think it's worth the extra cost to get the organic berries. And this is going to last a really long time because it's not like you're feeding a ton of this. It's like my dog's 25 pounds, and this would probably last. If this is full of blueberries and raspberries, I think this would last like a month. Because you're only doing a few of these per feeding anyway. I mean, depending on the size of your dog. And the neat thing is you can kind of just do it whenever you want. Like I just did blackberries before this. And so, because it's such an easy process, you can kind of mix it up and see what works best. You can do single berry, you can mix them up, kind of do whatever you want there.
Okay, we have some really great questions, and I'm excited to pick your brain on this. Okay, so could you freeze this concoction?
Yes.
Does that damage any parts of it?
No, you can. When you freeze things, any kind of processing in food and freezing kind of is like a preservation process. It's the least invasive, obviously. Be it if you're talking about, freeze drying and some other things like that. But you're always going to lose a little bit of something, but it's so marginal in this case that it doesn't really matter. And also we know as well that the bacteria, continue to thrive. You may lose some of that bacteria content, but not really very much. I've seen testing when it comes to pre-frozen and frozen products and fermented things and all that kind of stuff. So it really just depends, but no, you can go ahead and freeze it, but I would encourage people this does last for 30 days. So if you don't need to freeze it, there's no reason to. You can just keep it in your fridge because that's one of the beauties of fermentation is it was used, originally by humans as a food preservation method. So you can keep it in a raw food state, but, keep it preserved as well.
We had another question. Can it be added to homemade dog food? Sure. You can be added to any diet, even if you're feeding kibble and you want to ferment some berries, go for it. So we are getting some questions about the sugar content. And you had actually mentioned that is one of the benefits of fermentation. So I wanted you to talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, if you're going to be, I mean, there's natural sugars in berries just generally, but that doesn't outweigh the fact that they're healthy for your dog. So, you could feed unfermented berries and they would still be very healthy. Obviously, that's not going to be the mainstay of the diet. These are things that you add on top, or in my case, for instance, you know, my daughter eats a lot of berries, and so they're just in the fridge. So I'm just going to give them to Huckleberry as a treat when I'm getting them out for her or whatever. Um, like I thought of maple and then just lost my train of thought. So this is where we are. So
You're like, wait, this live is actually about maple.
Exactly. You've been around her. So what the nice thing is, you're still doing it at that small amount, but fermentation is going to reduce that sugar content. So what happens is the bacteria actually eat the sugars. That's what they thrive on the most. And you're leaving it out for 3 days to encourage those bacteria out on the counter for 3 days to encourage those bacteria to eat more. So basically, once you put this in your fridge for 30 days, it will continue to ferment to some degree, but it'll be at a much, it'll slow way down because of the fact that the bacteria like it, more in that like 60 to 70 degree, 70 plus range in order to, thrive. And so you are going to reduce the sugar, which is really nice. It's the same thing. Like if you went ahead and, bought some green juju goat milk and you fermented it. It's the exact same thing. The bacteria are going to eat those lactose sugars and they're going to reduce the sugar content, just generally. So they get to do that work for you. And those bacteria also create extra organic acids like acetic acid, which is really healthy, extra vitamins, especially B vitamins, extra enzymes. I was going to be like something else that I can't think of, but extra enzymes as well. So it's going to be easier to digest. And so it's really bringing the best of both worlds with the berries and the fermentation.
Yeah. So basically it sounds like we feed berries as a small portion of a fresh food diet anyway, and usually they're pulverized or something along those lines. But to Billy's point, if you are concerned about the sugar content and some of these things, fermentation is just going to ease your mind even more because it will reduce the sugar content, which is good to know. We had another question that was about using frozen berries, like berries that were previously frozen and thawed, and then you add kombucha.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I don't know exactly what the consistency is going to be. It might, because they have a different consistency, they might break down more and it might be more of like a slurry or something, which would be totally fine. I mean, you could do anything you want, really. You could even take this and put it in a blender and blend it into like a paste consistency. I mean, it just depends on how you want to feed it, but using them should be fine because obviously we know that the health benefits are still there when it comes to frozen berries. And also, just make sure they're thawed first because you want to be able to, you want this to be around room temperature, when you start. But that doesn't mean you can't just take the kombucha out of the fridge because it should go up to room temperature pretty quickly. So it just depends.
Okay, that's good to know. And someone was asking if this is recorded. Yes, it'll be, it'll stay on the Facebook and Instagram, and then we will edit it and put it on YouTube as well. So if you're using, it looks like you're using a pint jar. If you're using a different size jar, does the time matter? Like if the volume is bigger? No, someone wants to make a bigger batch, say they like fermented berries too, whatever.
It should be fine. I don't think so, unless you were. No, I think even if you went into like industrial size, to be honest with you, it would be still totally fine. So yeah, that's a good point. This is a pint jar, but if you were going to do, for instance, we also have at home the I don't know, it's like not exactly double this, but it's the larger jar that's wide mouth like this. You could do that as well, or if you want to do like a liter or whatever you want. I don't think the time should really matter. You're just trying to really initiate that pre-digestion. You're not trying to like turn it into wine or anything like that. So you don't really want to go a really long time. So should be fine.
So that was another question about, is there any concern as far as alcohol with this process?
No, it's really going to be like, it's like anything, like even kefir produces like very residual amounts of alcohol, but it doesn't matter. It's not like something that's actually going to register. And at that 3 days within kombucha itself, you would have to leave this for like, if you left this out like for like several months or something, it would turn into vinegar for sure. And then you could have your like blueberry kombucha vinegar and add that to recipes or whatever. Am I the only one that would do something like that? Probably. But
yeah, let us know how it goes.
But at the 3 days, no, you don't really have to worry about that. That's the kind of fermentation that, you know, I advocate for in pet food, is this like just getting that process started and that pre-digestion, but not really going into, you know, you're not making beer or something like that.
Gotcha. And so I guess other questions revolve around just like different things that you could ferment in kombucha similarly besides berries that might be easy to do at home.
Like in terms of, is there any examples, or is it?
I think someone mentioned cabbage earlier. I didn't know like how important the sugar content was for this process. If you wanted to try a different fruit.
Yeah, it's pretty important. With the cabbage, I would highly recommend that they buy Bam's Beets from Green Juju, which is already fermented cabbage. And, but it,
or I guess off the top of your head, can you think of any other examples besides berries that might be good? And we can circle back because I know the question's going to haunt you for the next 2 weeks, but is there anything else that you can see that's easy at the grocery store that you could?
I mean, with this specific process, I would stick to kind of in the wheelhouse of what we're talking about, because when you get into other ferments, like let's say, I just saw a question. You can use cheesecloth instead of paper towel. And I do use that with my kombucha at home. So kudos to that question. I would stay in this wheelhouse, maybe strawberries and that kind of stuff, just because there are better ferments for, and honestly, it's a little bit trickier to do those, but there are just better ways to ferment vegetables and things like that than this process. And this process works, I think, better because of the fact that this is going to be, the things I'm mentioning here are going to be higher in sugar. So I would start here, and then and I don't want the sugar part to freak people out, because that's the reason why this is going to work so well, is because those bacteria can really get in there in a very short period of time, and be able to do that. So, if you were, if you were at home and you were, say, using fermented Green Juju goat milk, you did some fermented berries, and then you used Lewis fermented golden paste, that would be enough fermentation, I think, for, whatever diet you're doing. I mean, you're good to go there. There's so much value in fermented foods, but there's also a ton of value in fresh foods. So, I'm a huge advocate of combining both of those things. So.
Yeah, for the serving size, Billy was talking about 1 teaspoon per 20 pounds per meal for the liquid. So I guess if you blended the whole thing up, it would probably be a similar serving size. But for the fruit, you basically just gave one fermented blackberry to your French bulldog, right, per meal?
Yeah, and it was a pretty huge blackberry. But just kind of eyeball it. It's not, an exact science. I would, if you have a small dog, I might do like 3 or 4 blueberries, or, whatever. Or if, it just really depends. You're not really going to throw off the balance of any diet. I think people think that you can very easily throw off the balance of a dog's diet with things like this, but it's not, you really can't. And what I mean by that is, when I'm making my dog's food at home, I make a base of the higher caloric items that are going to make up like the mainstay of the diet, like milk and, raw food that has, that's meat based, and eggs and things like that. And then all of these other things that play as vital of a role, say if it's Green Juju blends, or if it's, fermented vegetables or bone broth, all these things that are really low calorically, but make like a really big difference in the diet itself. You can kind of just eyeball those things. And what Kelly, the owner of Green Juju, advocates for the plop method, which is, when we're using our blends, it's just take a spoon and do a large plop for a large dog, a medium plop for a medium dog, and so down the line. So with these, I would do exactly the same thing. I would just eyeball it. I don't even think I have necessarily for my own dog's diet, I have a spreadsheet on my computer, where I do here. I'm like, oh, just don't worry about it. And you're like, but I have a spreadsheet. It's fine.
Yeah. And I'll say, you're like, you say, don't worry about it, but it's just because all of it is in your head and you're doing the math as you're staring at the bowl. Not the rest of us aren't doing that.
Well,
some people are.
That's
not
somewhat
me.
true. Because it was actually funny because the other day, Emily was like, oh, Huckleberry's too skinny. You should feed him more. And I was like, it's not that easy. I have to go.
Like, Emily, he is getting like 875 calories at meal 1. At meal 2, he is getting 672 calories.
Well,
whatever it is.
My thing was this, like when I'm combining the different aspects of it, I do all of like the fat to protein ratios and things like that. And so, but then I thanked her later. I was like, oh, I was actually great because I got to go on my computer and redo some of those values. And I really enjoy doing that kind of thing.
There you go. Oh, here we go. Donna just says that she keeps a calendar to keep track of the different diets. So there you go. You have there are more of you out there, Billy. You're not alone.
No, well, exactly. So, and I do want to put people's minds at ease. I did add extra calories to Huckleberry's diet, so he is not malnourished. Although we sort of disagreed, but I was like, all right, we can feed him a little bit more. So
we disagreed, but my wife got what she wanted, so it's fine.
Yes, exactly.
So somebody had a question, which I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but about fermenting cranberries. And you know that Judy is really, really into cranberries. So if you could try that, we would love to hear your results.
Oh, you can do that. That's totally fine.
Cranberries, you know that it's cool?
Yeah, cranberries
you have to cut them?
Yeah, I would cut them in half. Cranberries are more charged, but they still have sugar. So this will 100% work with that. That's a great, awesome. I didn't even think of that. That would be really great around this time of year too. Maybe a Thanksgiving adorable spread with fermented cranberries.
There you go.
I'm looking at all you bowl picture people out there who, I do bowl pictures, but some people I'm like, wow, you kind of blow me out of the water when it comes to some of this stuff.
Yeah, but you get the bladder health benefits from cranberry too.
Yeah.
Fermented cranberries. There we go. We're all going to do it. Okay.
Exact same process. And this is the time of year you can actually get them. So that's the good.
Yeah.
Good
you got to stock up. Heck yeah. Okay. That was an awesome question. So appreciate whoever asked that question. There was another good question I wanted to ask. Is it best to use glass when you're doing this, or should you only use glass?
Yeah, I mean, you could use other things, but just generally in fermentation, glass is really the way to go. Good example, that would be this kombucha brand still uses glass to ferment it and go through the I'm sure being on the production side of pet food, the ridiculousness of making something in a glass product, but you probably want to do that. But I don't want that to have you guys stop you from doing it as well. So if that's a limitation for you, there's still going to be a huge benefit to doing that. So I would recommend that.
Cool. And so for those of you that are asking about the recording or you missed the beginning, this will be posted to both the Instagram and the Facebook today. And then we will edit this and put it on YouTube as well. So it'll be available for free if you need to reference the beginning. But basically, Billy is telling us how we can very easily ferment fruit at home for our pets and some of the benefits associated with it. We have covered cranberries, strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, and raspberries.
Well, maybe I should just give the quick tutorial here.
Okay. Yep. We can do it one more time.
Yes, exactly. Take a jar, fill it with your favorite berry, and then pour the kombucha in the jar. So the berries are submerged in the kombucha. Put a paper towel or cheesecloth on top. Put a rubber band around, keep it on there. And then leave it on your counter for 3 days, and then put it in your fridge, and you're good to go for 30 days. And then you just scoop it out and feed it. And your dog or cat can get wonderful beneficial yeasts and probiotics and antioxidants and vitamins and minerals.
Awesome. And then somebody was asking, we had answered this question, but was concerned about freezing. So Billy let us know that you can use frozen berries. You just have to thaw them before putting them in the jar. And you can also freeze your fermented berries and the liquid as well afterwards, if you wanted to put them into a mold or something along those lines. So you can do either of those things. Somebody wants to know your favorite brand of kombucha.
My favorite widely available brand is GT's, which is basically available at almost every grocery store, Walmart. I know Walmart because I when I go home to the small town I grew up in, Wisconsin, there's no grocery store. There's only Walmart. And so I go there and buy kombucha. So you can pretty much get it everywhere. And, some of the really great ones to use, again, would be, the ginger variety they have would be highly beneficial with this. This one specifically, multi-green, which has blue-green algae and spirulina in it, or lemon berry, or whatever you like. And it's a good opportunity to tell people as well to drink kombucha yourself. It's highly, highly beneficial, highly healthy. I try to drink, a 16-ounce bottle a day, and it's another great way to get more tea into your diet, because of there's a lot of studies that show that the more tea you drink, the more your the chances that you die go down in basically every category. So side note there.
Okay, well, I did start drinking kombucha ever since you visited.
Nice.
So
that's a win for me.
Yeah, you checked one box. And then someone asked, once you put it in the fridge, do you seal it? Yep. So you can put the lid on after the 3 days that you put it in the fridge.
I can demonstrate.
Yep. There you go. Billy's demonstrating. You just put the lid on and put it back in your fridge. Super easy. We can all DIY kombucha. Maybe we can do a follow-up for those that are interested in starting from scratch, how to do that. But we did just get that question.
I have a really nerdy thing about my brewing of kombucha, which I'm very proud of. So the SCOBY is the sort of conglomeration of the organisms inside that sort of looks like a mushroom that lives on top of the kombucha itself. And my SCOBY has been alive for like 5 years. And I have specifically tried to make it as diverse as possible with different microorganisms. So what I did was I used a bunch of different commercial starters to start my batches so I could inoculate it with different types of yeast and good bacteria. But I also got other people's SCOBYs, including one of my mentors, Roxanne Stone. I got her home SCOBY, and then I would put it on top. Gosh. I would put it on top of my SCOBY, so my SCOBY would envelop it, and it would become part of my SCOBY, so I could get other people's. So I have this like really diverse, amazing SCOBY. She's
Billy, I feel like that SCOBY is your retirement plan. Like at one point, it's going to be like what saves the earth and repopulates our microbiomes is like Billy's 25-year-old SCOBY that he's been working on.
I hope so.
Oh my gosh, that is so strange, but honestly amazing. And I'm not surprised at all. And I shouldn't be laughing because you are so healthy. Like, I feel like you are the healthiest, happiest person I know.
Oh, I'll take it. There you go.
Happiness starts in the gut with fermentation. You've convinced me. You're a very happy person.
Yes. And I also will say too, a lot of people buy SCOBYs, but I actually grew the SCOBY from a bottle.
So you started from scratch. Like you grew, like it's like your child. Like you grew okay.
And one other funny story. We were having people over in when we lived in Los Angeles, and we had to like move the SCOBY and the kombucha, and I moved her over to the She's a her. She doesn't have a name, but she's a her. So we moved her over. And then at the end, Emily was like, oh, I'll move this back. And I was like, she doesn't really trust you. So I'll go ahead and move that back. And I went over and I was like, I think I have better energy here. So I will go ahead and do that.
Oh my gosh. I love it. You just find out so many things about you every time we talk to you.
Maple is going to be like, what is wrong with you as she gets older? So this is my prediction.
No, they're like, kids are going to come over to play with Maple and they're gonna be like, what's in that room? And they're like, that's Scoby's room. They're like, yeah. Do you have a sister? Like, kind of. My dad grew her himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So you have your own SCOBY that you use to brew your own kombucha, which you use to ferment your own berries.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. So we covered the second part, which was actually fermenting the berries, but maybe we can follow up for those that are dying to know how the first part of actually making the kombucha and the SCOBY's room. Yeah. How SCOBY's room.
Well, and just to pique people's interest even more, here's a really interesting thing. I'm so scared. So, every time you brew kombucha, the SCOBY gets a new layer, right? And so it gets thicker and thicker. And then by the time eventually you have to take her out and like take pieces off of, peel back. So, and then you have SCOBY left, which make great dog treats. So you can cut those up. And I actually worked with a vet, I believe in Texas, who had a really hard, so that SCOBY is full of good yeast and good bacteria. It's like the center of the good yeast and bacteria. And so she actually had a really hard yeast case and she would feed the dog pieces of SCOBY every day and resolved a severe yeast issue doing that. So there's
Billy, why are you not breeding SCOBY for the masses here? What is happening? You're holding out. Why don't we get a piece of SCOBY? I mean, I think Judy would kill it, to be honest, but maybe we could keep it alive for a little while.
No, we can. Well, I tell you what, I think I'll see you guys, at some point in the future here, and I will bring you a piece of my SCOBY so you can start your own kombucha and make your own treat factory. The only problem is, like I said in the beginning, it can't be used in commercial pet food. It's not a AAFCO approved ingredient at this point. So, which is really sad because, you could help a lot of animals that way. So
absolutely. Joking aside, it is very, very beneficial. And I did not know that you had this organism living in your house.
I'll text you a picture of what it looks like later. Someone said, isn't there a story about Rodney eating SCOBY? Is it this SCOBY or other SCOBY? It's probably, I think it's someone else's SCOBY, but I'm vaguely remembering that, but.
Okay. Billy wasn't involved in that. I wasn't involved in that either. So I can't talk to it. Wow. Well, so I had no idea what a SCOBY was before this. And now I just have so much more knowledge. And we have more questions for you, I think, as far as the depths of fermentation that we can go. But today, fermented fruit, for those of you that missed it, super easy. You can buy the kombucha and the berries at your local grocery store. It takes 3 days, and then it's good for 30 days, and you can add it to your pet's meal. And Billy didn't really give us concrete serving sizes, which for some of you may be challenging. But basically, if you want to use it as a guideline, he was feeding 1 fermented blackberry to his French bulldog. So that's about the serving size that he was using. Okay. Was there anything else that we missed that you would like to cover before our time is up?
I don't think so. What I would like people to take away is, obviously I got into the weeds of some of the dorky science stuff, but, the simplicity of this. This is just food, and it's just nature, and it's just evolution, and it's just, the healthy breaking down of plant material and making it more digestible. And so I really go back to food, when it comes to formulation, or when it comes to, what I feed my own dog or what I feed myself. I just really go back to food as opposed to, trying to combine nutrients and things like that. So it's just another way to be able to really provide great healthy yeast, good probiotics, and a ton of antioxidants.
And so someone was asking if you can just give kombucha to your pet. And you had answered that in the beginning where you say you do, but it's not an AFCO approved.
Yeah, I've been telling people to do that for a long time. So it's basically 1 teaspoon per 20 pounds per meal. So, and all you have to do is just, scoop it into the bowl and get some of that benefit there. So it's pretty easy.
Awesome. And lots of people are saying that they learned a lot and they also want to learn more about kombucha. So we might actually have to set up another live and we'll talk more about SCOBY.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Billy, for never ceasing to amaze us with new information. The gist is that fermenting fruits for your pets is super easy. You can do it at home, has a variety of benefits, antioxidants from the berries. You also have less sugar when you ferment it. It's easier to digest. You have the fiber from the fruit, lots of benefits. So thank you, Billy, so much for always keeping it interesting. There's never going to be a lack of interesting news in dog nutrition while you're in the industry.
Well, that's what I strive for, is new stuff. So I
Awesome.
take that as a big compliment.
Okay, we'll get the recordings will be here on Facebook and Instagram, but we'll also get the edited version up on YouTube probably within the next week or so. And we'll post that on social as well. But thank you, Billy. And for everyone else, have a good evening.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Bye.